Thank you very much. I'd like to call the July 11th Finance and Audit Committee to order. I understand there are no late items. A motion to adopt the agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Fuller. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes from June 13th, 2018. Mover, please.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Yocum. Any errors, omissions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. There are no presentations, so we'll go into 6A reports, which is the first one up, is the 155 Commercial Street Heritage Facade Grant, to be introduced by Mr. Lindsay, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned, this is a heritage facade grant that staff are recommending that Council consider proceeding with. It's for the property at 155 Commercial, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Schulberg just to give you a brief introduction on the application.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. This application is for a facade grant program. It's basically a repaint and recovering of the existing awnings. Color scheme will remain the same. I think beyond that, just to note that I don't know if there's any other details I want to add at this point, unless there's any question. It's a pretty straightforward application. Oh, sure. I will note, Dale, remind me, we should note that there is the budget transfer involved, as you've noticed in the agenda, basically taking almost $8,000 from the Heritage Home Grant Program, transferring it over to the facade grant to allow for this application to proceed this year. There will be about $4,000 remaining in the Heritage Home Grant Program, which would allow for at least one application of their program if it should occur. My general feeling with the history of that program was we're probably not going to see an application before the end of the year under the Home Grant Program. So. Thank you.
The report is on page 8 to 15. There's two motions. The recommendation is that we recommend approval of the 8,600 and 8,350 Heritage Facade Grant, and number two, to provide the 79,7804 Heritage Facade Grant shortfall through the budget transfer as noted. May I have a mover and a seconder to get it on the floor, please? Moved by Councillor Fuller, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. He had his hand up before you there, Cheryl, sorry. Any questions or concerns? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Flipping over, we'll go to the Community Program Development Grant, Mid-Island Youth and Community Cooperative. I see Mary here and not Richard. The purpose is to obtain council approval of a request for a Community Program Development Grant. Ms. Smith.
So we have a grant application from the Mid-Island Youth Community Development Cooperative for an arts and food festival in South End. The festival called Food Art Fun. It's the third year. This will be the third year of the festival, and it's been growing every year. They're asking for a grant in the amount of $2,665 in order to grow it with some new programs.
Thank you very much. I would ask for the motion, please, in order to put it on the floor for discussion. Moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Fuller. Any questions or comments or concerns to Ms. Smith? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor? If we could just do that again, please. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7, other business. And this is the conversation that's taken place previously on many occasions up till now, but the consideration of the Nanaimo Deep Discovery Association funding request. This was deferred, if you will, back to the Finance and Audit Committee from the Committee of the Whole meeting. And the motion, I'll just read it quickly for you, it was moved and seconded that the City of Nanaimo match contributions toward the Nanaimo Deep Discovery Association with the Nanaimo Hospitality up to a maximum joint contribution of $127,575. Is a member of staff providing any further information as it relates? I just don't have that there's somebody's going to introduce this or provide any updates, so I'll just ask that
I'll comment and then Sheila can comment. So one thing I did want to point out is council may want to consider developing a policy that provides direction and expectations for responding to these types of requests from nonprofit organizations such as Nanaimo, Deep Discovery, and the NRE, because right now you have no policy really that guides you outside of our current grant program. So that may be something you want to consider before you make a decision on this, or going forward, something that you want to look at developing. We did look into funding sources if council wishes to support this. You still have $65,000 left in your council contingency, which you could allocate a portion of that to this project. But that would leave your council contingency basically spent for the year.
Thank you very much for that.
I'll move the motion to get it back and forth.
What is the motion?
The same one that's there. Moved and seconded to see if they're not with match contributions towards the Nanaimo Discovery Association with the Hospitality Association. I would like to add, or other parties, oh, sorry, okay, I'll just put that.
So you would like to move the motion that's been referred back?
Yes.
Okay. A seconder. Seconded by Councillor Fuller. Now we'll have open discussion, and I don't have anybody on the board yet. So we're still using, we're still going to use the board, I'm guessing?
I don't think it's working.
It's not, it isn't, yeah, I don't see it coming up, so, yes.
So I went back and I reviewed their presentation to us, and I think, and I read some other stuff, and they did say that they would not be coming back to council for any further funding. So that's a concern I have. Like, I think it's a great project, but if we start now and that it happens, how much do we invest into it? So I don't have an issue if we match funds from, I would like to say, from other organizations besides just the Nanaimo Hospitality, because there might be other people willing to give 5 here, 10 there, and then do the match that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry?
Thank you. I can't support this on the basis that it's too fast for them to come back and ask for money right away. We already promised them a piece of land. That's all they requested. They would go off, and apparently they would get funding, and they would come back to us. So I didn't hear that they were going to come back to the Nanaimo funding when they presented to us.
That's my concern.
They can go back. They can go find funding options. That's what they told us. They gave us an ultimatum. They said that if we don't get land, we're going to lose it. We can't apply for funding. That's why we said, okay, well, we'll give you some land on there. And then they were supposed to go out and get funding and come back. So now it seems like they're coming back for other funding, which wasn't the intent of us giving them land. So I won't support it until they come back and tell us what they've got for funding. Like, I think all this other stuff seems to be ludicrous. Fundraising consultants, like, why do we need fundraising consultants when you don't even have the actual business plan? How do you fundraise for something when you don't have a plan? So that seems to be a waste of money. Architects, yes, we've seen some of this, a promotional documentary, community media education awareness for 23. They seem to be jumping the gun. So I think that they actually need a business plan and try to get some funding, and that's only $38,000. So I think they can figure that out for themselves on how to get $38,000. If they can't, they'll be back to the exact same situation. Why? The same reasons they didn't support the NRA. If you don't have a good business plan, you can't get there. How do I know you're going to be able to actually proceed with this, and then they're going to fall back on the city? So I would support this. Okay.
Ian?
Thank you, Chair. So first of all, I agree with Ms. Fulla's comment about needing policy for future, and I would certainly support that. In terms of this motion, when they came to council, their original request was simply the amount of $100,000, and then I think it was Mayor McKay made a subsequent motion regarding matching, and I spoke at the time and said that I would prefer that we just supported them and show leadership in that regard. I still feel that way. I'm willing to support the motion that's on the table. I hear what Councillor Hong's saying, but I think they do need some seed money, and I don't have a problem with a fundraising consultant for them. I think that's probably a wise move. So I think, to me, matching funds is maybe a compromise between simply giving them money and doing nothing for them. So I'm willing to go along with that. And so I will support the motion as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Bill Yoakum and then Gord Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I as well I like the original request 100, but if there's 100,000 requested at 127, I definitely support this, for the fact is, we're in a dark gray area right now in the city, especially in that area. And, well, I don't know where the stack is gonna go, but nevertheless, it's a positive story. We've spent money on other things, but I don't think all those citizens benefit, right? Where this is for all, this is a regional attraction, and I don't wanna be just another Nolan Amo type mindset on this. This is, to me, this is a good thing. You gotta spend some of this money to get positive things for positive results. And I like the idea of matching, and we're quite supportive, it's a little bit of a scenario, but sort of like the Fort Theater, we'll match this, pay, put money for here, but you gotta do this. I see this somewhat similar, but then we're gonna put money out the gate, possibly 100, 127 grand. And we get something really positive rolling for the citizens of the city, the citizens of the region, and tourists of all, because I spent the last week in Vancouver for work stuff, and we do all those tourist attractions, and I think, oh my god, this would actually kill the aquarium, and what I just spent on that aquarium again, we need this, folks. We can't just be running and spending our energy, but we're spending man hours, human hours galore and dollars galore for something over in that mess right over there. That's gonna be well over 100 grand before you know it.
Already is.
I bet you it is, on the services calls and stuff, so I support what Councilor Thorpe's saying. I'm behind this 100%, and it's sort of like a legacy project. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair. I can go on and on, I'll leave the point pretty clear.
Thank you. I have Gord and then Diane.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions and comments. Have they given us a list of whom they've tried to get funding from for this specific item so far? Have they even tried to get funding from anybody?
Well, my assumption is that the Hospitality Association, through the MRDT funding modality, and then I heard VIREB, I think, Vancouver Island Real Estate Board, through their relationship with them, we're going to, I think they had identified them as one of their funding sources. Beyond that, and then government going up the ladder, but I don't know of anything beyond that, or I haven't heard anything beyond that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, through you to Councillor Fuller. Other than what they said during their presentation on the 25th and what's attached on your agenda, their ask, the staff don't have further information.
The motion, the way it stands, is actually I kind of like it because it would limit the amount that the city contributes to the same amount as an Nanaimo Hospitality Association, up to a maximum contribution. So it puts the onus on the Discovery Association to look for other fundings, because if the NHA is only willing to put forward 30K, this is just an example, we would match that. That would still only be 60K, and they would be responsible to come up for the rest. So in a lot of ways, I do like this motion. To contribute $100,000 right off the bat, as Councilor Hahn says, without a business plan, I can't support that at this point, but I can support the motion as it stands. It puts the onus on them to find other sources of funding, not just the NBA or NHA and City of Nanaimo.
Thank you. Diane?
Thank you. I think that this actually puts the onus on the Nanaimo Hospitality Association. It doesn't mention any other fundraising. It says that the city would match the Nanaimo Hospitality Associations. It doesn't actually ask them to find any other sources of funding. So, in fact, it does just put the onus on the hospitals. I tend to agree with what Ian said. I would have preferred a grant of $100,000. We, sometimes you have to take some risks, but in this instance, there has been a tremendous amount of support behind the individuals who are moving this forward, so much so that we gave them a piece of land. So we must have at some point been impressed with the work they were doing. So if this was, it's gonna be the best we can do, I would want to, match all the funds.
That's what I wanted to do.
I don't know why we would want to single out the Hospitality Association. I think we need to have some discussions, or instruct our staff to have discussions with the Hospitality Association. Because I don't know whether this sort of development aspect of a project like this is part of their funding. I'm not sure if it's going straight like, okay, we're gonna fund things that bring people to Nanaimo, but put them in hotels, and how far does that extend? Does that extend right down to the building of a project, or does that mean once it's built and up and running, Nanaimo Hospitality Association is gonna help fund bringing people into town to attend those things? We don't have enough information here, I guess, if we are going to choose not on our own assessment of merit. We are now relying on other assessments of merit, and I think we need to talk to those to find out what it is they'll be assessing and what it is that impresses them. Nevertheless, if council thinks this is the route to go, knowing that it actually doesn't assist with broader fundraising, so be it, I'll support it.
Thank you. I have Sheila Gurry and then Cheryl, and if you wouldn't mind, if I would just like to make a comment.
Oh, go ahead, you're heading.
But Sheila.
Thank you, Chair. Just listening to council's discussion, I believe even Councillor Armstrong would like this, as well as Councillor Fuller, the mover and the seconder, if we added a line after Nanaimo Hospitality Association in the motion and put "and other organizations," so it's not just limited to the Nanaimo Hospitality Associations.
Yes.
So that could be a friendly amendment if there
Yes.
was agreement? Okay.
Thank you. I was just going to make the comment that as chair, and I missed the last meeting when they made their presentation, I did reach out to Lauren and Tim to have a conversation, and then I did speak with Dan Brady after that to find out where their position is in terms of what they're permitted or allowed or not allowed, or how their money rolls out and so on and so forth. And so I'm not after those conversations, I'm not comfortable with the motion where it says match contributions toward, because I think that the Hospitality Association may be handcuffed in some ways, in the way that they have to do what they have to do in terms of the amounts that they have available and or willing to do. So we might find ourselves pushing the Deep Discovery Ocean folks out there now to get enough money and start having to hit the pavement hard again to try to find somebody else, come up with the shortfall. So to Ian and Diane's and Cheryl's and everybody else, Bill's point, I would prefer to see us say that the city of Nanaimo would contribute up to a certain amount, knowing that they need somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 to perform all of these studies, which I think is an investment. Like, we're making an investment so that they would know the city's going to provide whatever the number is, 40 or whatever it is, and the Hospitality Association is going to give 30, and BIREB's going to give 30 or whatever. Now we're at 100, we're all good, as opposed to saying matching a certain contributions, because I think they need 100. I don't think they need 127 in conversations, but that would certainly provide to them beyond probably what they need. So I would prefer to see us say the city of Nanaimo, and I hear we have $64,000 or $65,000 in our contingency, up to a certain amount, which would essentially be a third, or something along those lines. But I'm not opposed to anything that's been discussed, but I do think we need to help them fund their research to take the next step or not. Thank you very much for indulging me. Cheryl?
I've heard what everybody says, and I think I agree with Councillor Brennan. I would like to, if we're gonna do the match or whatever, because we did do that with the Port Theatre, which I think we're sort of set a precedence on that if we're gonna start, you know, because it is a cultural thing and scientific thing. That's why I personally like the match, is that's something we've already done. But I would like to have more information from staff. I'm kind of disappointed that they weren't here today to answer some of our questions, their staff, about what, if we do this, what precedents are we setting? Because those are always my concerns. If you do it for one, should you not do it for the other? And, you know, because it does become the public expectation of that. And that's just my thought. And I agree with what Jerry says too. You know, we can't keep just doing this all the time when somebody comes forward, because lots of people come forward with great things that we have to say no to because we just don't have the funding. So I just personally like the match thing, just because I think then it puts a little bit more onus, not only on us, but also on the community to show that they support it as well. Different people, you know, aspects of the community, such as tourism or wherever they can find. Chamber of Commerce would be another one that comes to mind, so thank you.
Would you object if I just asked you a question on your comment?
No, go ahead.
So if we leave this motion as it is, because that's what's on the floor, and we say matching, and the Hospitality Association comes back and says, we have $25,000, so our match is $25,000.
For that particular one, then if somebody else comes forward, then we continue the match. That's how I look at it, up to.
Well,
Up
so if
to
somebody
the-
else comes forward with 25, we'll match
We'll
their
match another
25 too?
That's how I'm looking at it, yes. Every time that somebody comes forward, up until the total amount of, we said of 127,000. Or we set a date by this date for this, you could use a date too, like, I don't know, but I'm assuming they need it sooner than later. So that's why if you did it, I know we do that in different charities do it that way, right? Like, somebody will come out and say, we're giving $2 for everything, and we ask all the other competition to match the same thing, then somebody else will do it, and that's how that keeps building.
So if I may, then, so
Yeah.
not to debate with
No.
you, but then if they're successful in raising $75,000 and we're going to give them $75,000.
Because we said up to a maximum of 100,000 combined total.
Well, up to a maximum
Minus one.
joint contribution of
Yeah,
127.
so the most we would have to give is 63.5.
So I think we should say
64.
that. Like, for me, it complicates things. It's just too complicated. There's too many variables. If they know that the city is willing to provide X, up to X, so they know that, then they know what they need to get from other organizations in order to be able to fulfill their studies and research and that they need to do. I just think it's too complicated if we start doing, every time somebody gives you $5,000, just come and tell us that they did and we'll give you another 5 to get to 100 or whatever they need. It's just too complicated for me. Personally, it's just too complicated. I think, Diane, did you have your hand up? And then Ian? And, or was Gord before you? Diane, Gord, Ian?
I agree with you, Mr. Chair. That is too complicated. We've had our financial advice on that is that we have $65,000 in our contingency fund that can be used. Is that right?
Correct, you still have 69,000 unallocated in capital contingency.
Yeah. So, you know, I would mind simplifying this and giving them 65,000. It's not what they asked for, but it's close enough, and I think that they probably can boost that up to 127,575, and I think that shows our support. It indicates to the community that we're interested in having some. We've been being told, you know, you're gonna have somewhere to go for the people to get up in the cruise ships. And so here's one, walking distance, and I agree with Councillor Yoka. The waterfront of Vancouver is fantastic. The aquarium is world class, and we can afford $65,000 I would want to defeat this motion and have a new one that's clean and just the word $65,000 and says not to fundraise the balance.
Thank you very much. I concur with what you just said. I have Gord, Ian, Jerry.
A few things, yep, they know what they
So-
need.
Oh, you were supposed to be after Sheila.
No, I did speak, but I want to go one more time because I said
Okay,
no,
well,
sorry.
I'll go to, so Gord, Ian,
After Jerry.
Jerry,
Yeah, thanks,
Cheryl.
Bill.
Sorry.
So yeah, they do have an idea of what they need. What I like about the motion is it puts the onus on them, not on us to supply what they need, but them. We have 65,000 council contingency, we use that, we have no other opportunities to use that the rest of the year. The community is, by passing this motion, we show interest in supporting them, but also interest, as others have said, that the business plan be there. Because if they don't have a business plan, they get this $127K and it fails, then what?
And these are their supporters.
Sure, there's enormous community support. So perhaps there could be some community support towards the funding of this. Another option on top of the NHA, Snuneymuxw. Snuneymuxw will benefit hugely from this, especially if they work out something with the group towards, employees, there, a certain percentage of employees or however they want to work it. They might be in charge of any concessions, who knows? But they will benefit considerably, and they do have some money that they can contribute to this. We're also going to need their approval to go ahead and, but I like the motion because it's not just limited to the Hospitality Association. It gives them the opportunity to get out there and see who else is interested in funding this. So I will support the motion, and I won't support if that fails 65.
Thank you. I have Ian, Jerry, Cheryl, and then if there's no other comments or information, we have not agreed to add and other organizations.
Yes, we did.
We did agree
Yeah.
as a friendly amendment?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So Ian, Jerry, and Cheryl.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So as I said before, I was in favor of their original ask, and I agree with the comments of the chair a few minutes ago, and I agree with Councillor Brennan. And my preference all along has been to take the leadership role in this. If we believe it's a good project for the city, and we've heard their presentation a couple of times, I think that we should put our money where our mouth is. So my preference would be to defeat the motion that's on the floor now, and I would support a subsequent motion, as Councillor Brennan indicated, to use our funds to supply them with $65,000. Give them that as their seed money, our contribution, and then they can go and work other organizations to top that up if they need to. So to me, as I think you said, Chair, the matching thing as we try to match dribs and drabs that come in is just way too complicated. And I think we should be being the leaders in this. I think it's worthwhile. So that would be my preference, defeat the current motion and put a new one on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry.
Thank you. And again, I just want to emphasize that not that I don't support this project. I think we all did support this project by giving them land as the first step. That's actually a pretty huge step considering on what we usually do. A lot of the time people are coming to us with plans already in place, ready to go. And then we make that decision. So we made a huge commitment. To commit now to money, it's not fair exactly what our staff say to other organizations. Island Roots, wanting to build in Bowen Park, or Bevan Park, sorry, that's another phenomenal reason that we should support them. They got funding from other people, they got the land from us. I supported the boathouse, but I wasn't interested in giving them land. Yet they had a plan to get funding. I support the Port Theatre, but not to fund the whole thing, so they're out getting money. I support the Emery, but they had no money. Exact same thing, with no funding. So if these guys are serious, they should start memberships. exactly what we told the NRA to do. They should come up with some sort of money, because right now, I don't know what they've done. Yeah, they put some work into it or whatever they've done, but it doesn't show me that they're serious, and I'm not willing to take the city onto this facility at these early stages if they're not organized enough. This is too soon. They need to have a better plan and actually an association with members and other people that are willing to come up, because that's what we said about the boathouse. They had letters from everybody. BIU, this and that, and this and that. But they didn't have a dime to their name. And that was the reason why I did support it. Had they said that we have $250,000 in the bank right now from our members and commitments, I would have looked at the boathouse to give them that facility down there a lot more than when they did come to us. And this is the exact same thing. I support this, but right now I can't. We've made that commitment already, a huge commitment, to provide them land. So they should go off and do their nonprofit things, because I need proof that there could be a solid nonprofit and an ability to build this. For example, Habitat for Humanity started off small. House here, duplex here, little subdivision here. They've proven to us that they can do it. So then this council said, hey, you guys have a good track record. We'll help you with a bigger development. And that's what I see with this organization. It could be great. I don't know. I'm not willing to take that chance with city-funded money at this point, and I think we made a huge commitment already by giving them the land, that they should go off and do their thing like every other nonprofit we expect. If we do this now, anybody with a simple idea with land, I know that we have, so that people know that we have AR land right next to Cavalati Lodge. So if somebody has a great idea and they want the AR land, they're gonna come to us and say, hey, give us $100,000, we have a business plan. We have no idea, we have no members, but we know that farming is important to us. So how do we set a precedent and rules and procedures that they have to get to a certain point before they come to us with funding? And we don't have that, it's just off the cuff. So for that, I do support staff's recommendation of setting up some criteria of some sort before we even get to this table, because it's wasting our time and staff time to be doing this. We have other things that we need to do that are important. So for that reason, I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Last point, I agree a lot with what Jerry said, because we have been doing that. Same thing, we look at votes around our NRE and around other things where we've expected certain things from them as well, which are financial plans, et cetera, et cetera. And in order for me to even look at giving this money, I would like to have a letter of intended support or support from Sonema. Because if they don't give it, it's not going to happen. Is that not correct? So I think if they do have the support from Sonema, then I would like to see a letter of intent of support before we start giving away city money. Like, I think that's a reasonable request, because we all know any developments down along the waterfront, we need to be working with our partners, and they're one of our biggest partners, if not the biggest partner. And if they come back and say, no, we're not in support of this, then we've just thrown away $100,000 or $65,000. So I would like to see that happen before we even contemplate any cash. Thank you.
Thank you. If you don't, I'm just going to try to throw in a last word, if I may. I prefer that we defeat this motion and return with another motion. And if you wanted to add in that X dollars conditional upon a letter of support from SFN before any monies would be spent, then great. But we need to invest in our city. We need to help people. We're sitting here talking about these people like we don't know who they are, and they haven't done anything, and they haven't made any efforts, and they haven't made any contributions, and who are they, by the way? And there's a chunk of dirt over there, and somebody's got a good idea, but they don't have a business plan, and maybe they'll, plant some corn. We sat here a year and a half ago and gave $75,000 to teens on the streets in 15 minutes, and I'm glad we did. However, we do make rush decisions. We're going to spend $17 million on a fire hall, an institutional building. No questions asked. So here we've got an organization that these are professional people that are volunteering, and they're working, and they're trying to make our downtown core better. That's going to be an economic driver to all of those things. And it might just be the catalyst like Science World in Falls Creek, like I just heard, to help grow our downtown as a place to visit. In this very meeting, 4 months ago, I heard the mayor say that he talked to an urban specialist that said, if you want people to come downtown, you have to have 250 events a year in order for people to want to come downtown to participate downtown. Yeah. No kidding. So we need things to attract and draw people to. Why do you think we have 2 cruise ships coming in? So we bought the property, and the property down, we bought it to do something on it, not to sit there and watch it deteriorate. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm quite comfortable with defeating this motion and coming back with another motion that says up to $65,000 on the condition that the First Nation provide a letter of support in principle. So that's my position. I'm going to call the question on the motion that reads, the City of Nanaimo match contributions towards the Nanaimo Deep Discovery Association with the Nanaimo Hospitality Association and other organizations up to a maximum joint contribution of $127,575. All in favor? Be careful. You have to understand. So, all in favor?
I just don't know the next motion though. I don't want to go down to 67 grand.
All in favor? Opposed? The motion is defeated. So I heard that there was another motion to be worded that the City of Nanaimo provide up to $65,000. Diane, I think you've captured. Do you want to?
$65,000, $65,000 out of the council contingency and the proposed
The balance. Did you want, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, so that's moved up to $65,000.
No, 65.
Oh, make it 65?
$65,000
Okay.
with the balance to be fundraised through other sources.
Which, thank you, which they would understand. Now, I did hear that with, on the condition that First Nations provide their support, that which might slow the whole process down again because we wait for First Nations to do that. That might be forever. They have to do this work. But you have the floor because the moved and seconded up to 65,000.
Moved and seconded up to 65, and then lots of things that was taken elsewhere. And the only reason I'm not thinking about including the SFN reference is because I think that is understood every time we approach the waterfront. I'm sure that there are various ways of approaching this with the SFN. So I'd rather it not be in the motion. I'd rather perhaps that they have the money they can.
I'm just wondering if you want to maybe amend your motion a little bit, just so City of Nanaimo provides $65,000 upon them fundraising the balance, because do you want to give them $65,000 and then they potentially are unable to raise the balance they need to do the work, and that we've invested $65,000 that might not result in anything? So do you want to make it conditional on them showing us proof they've raised the balance required?
I would do that.
Have a motion that gives them the confidence that the city is behind it and supporting it.
Gave them how many million dollars worth of
I
land?
think that they don't have to fundraise up to, so perhaps that's when I used the term balance, what gave the impression that nothing would go ahead until they had achieved the 127, but that wasn't my intentions. That they could fundraise the rest that they need. I don't want to set a figure that it has to be fundraised up to. That's their call. I would kick in 65. They fundraise for the balance they require, rather than the balance. But no, I don't want to add the SFN in because I think that that's implied in everything we do on the waterfront, and we don't need to do that and put pressure on the SFM to make a decision now, or, I mean, it gives the SFM the opportunity to look at it and decide when they're gonna make a decision on it, and it's not dictated by us.
Thank you. Sheila wanted to weigh in. And then
Thanks,
Ian.
Chair. I think that this might be the motion that might work if Councillor Brennan is in favor, and it's that council contributes $65,000 from the council contingency fund, and the balance of the funds requested be funded from other organizations. So it's not contingent on them getting the funds. So that's the intent of the motion, that the balance of the funds requested be funded from other organizations. It doesn't, the $65,000, you'll just give them outright.
Thank you. Personally, I don't even think that that's necessary,
I don't think it
but,
should be in there.
but my
Just
own,
give them the
I
money.
think if we keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah.
We know that the Hospitality Association is going to contribute 25 to 30 grand, so that gets them up to their 85 or 90. And they might have to back off on one of their research studies and say, you know what, can you just reduce the scope of work? Because this is all we've got. They have to get going. They have to get going, and if we don't show a commitment, then this thing is going to die like the majority of other projects die. So,
So Chair, we could just leave the rest out if Councillor Brennan would like. And
the
it's-
motion has been moved and seconded that says $65,000 from contingency.
Oh, I wasn't sure. Yes, exactly.
That's what the
yeah.
motion is. It's been moved
Was
and
it seconded by Councillor Thorpe? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
So that, I had Cheryl and then Bill Yocum. And,
No, I'm okay.
oh,
Thanks.
Ian, and then
Yes.
Bill Yocum and Gord
I think it's
Fuller,
Ian.
and then I'm going to call the question.
So, thank you, Chair. So, I would support the simplified version of the motion, which simply says that we will grant them $65,000 out of our contingency fund, stop. And if they choose to do more fundraising, that's up to them for whatever their needs are. But I agree, I think we should just keep it simple, and either we support them with that 65,000 or not. So if that is the motion, as it stands now,
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, that is the motion. So I hadn't realized it had been moved and seconded that way, and yes, it's just plain stop, $65,000.
so I will certainly support that. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Gord, then Bill, and then I'm calling the question.
Don't get me wrong, I do support the Density Discovery. Part of the reason why I supported the event center was I saw that it could be that draw. And we were willing to pay the whole shebang on that one. So I won't support this motion because it uses up the council contingency fund. And if someone comes to us for 25,000 or 20,000, then we have to pull it out of another reserve, et cetera, et cetera. If we do give them the 65,000, they can't raise the balance, because my guess is they will use some of that to raise the balance. Are we gonna get the rest back? There's nothing in there that says that we would. So I'm not gonna support the motion, because it's all of our contingency fund, but I do totally support the deep sea discovery idea. And if it's such a great idea, other organizations will step up and match whatever funds are needed. So, anyway, I would support a smaller amount of the contingency fund, but not the whole.
Thank you. Bill Yocum,
Yeah, thanks.
and then I'm calling the question.
Mr. Chair, earlier amongst the comfort and brief conversation you've had, which I fully respect, but this more comfort, this wording works better for, do you think, in your view of the NHA and just overall your original comments? I want to be supportive of those comments, and I think this gets it.
My opinion is that this would validate
Yeah, good.
their ambitions to fulfill four, they have 4 studies that they need to do, and somebody has to pay for it, and
Perfect.
they're exhausted.
And then I want to echo, I think a few of you said, we have to show leadership, and Councilor Thorpe yourself mentioned. And I totally concur, because we got to do something positive. can't also be chasing fires and throwing way more money at us in fires. And the taxpayer out there that actually expect positive things, like we've stated numerous times, people actually want to do good things, not always about the chasing fires, but of the social aspect of the offloading of island health and the problems on us. So it's my rant. So nevertheless, I asked the first, second, the mover and the seconder, is there space? I still concur thinking we should just get a flat 100 to really show we mean it and we really mean this. And go get all these 4 reports plus nothing, not how much reports cost. Our reports are also in the millions. So nevertheless, I just want to throw it out. I'm gonna support 65 grand, but I think if we really want this, we're gonna have to bet 100 grand. 100 grand.
God, how many
It's
millions in
not
land?
change, but it's 100 grand that's gonna help make the city a better move somewhere. And if we can get into movement back down where we think this may go, look at the alternative by doing nothing. That won't slow down and stop. We gotta put in work to value, that's why we do this. We try some stimulus down there, this is a lower price stimulus, and it's worth it. We will get investors again down there. So I just ask if there's any way you guys wanna go. I'm not trying to throw money around, because I just see the value of that neck of the world has to put the work. And the first, my piece on First Nation and being from there, I would leave it out as well. We weren't too worried about their consent on the waterfront master plan, so it's a difference today. So that's another conversation. But so nonetheless, I just want to get some movement down there, some action. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted, I threw that out for the mover a second. And if not,
Where's the money come from?
So if you're asking me if we think about that, Ian and I think, we're prepared to award $100,000 worth of task for Awesome. So, I mean, I'm okay with that, but if it means that the motion will fail, I don't want it to fail.
And
Where's the money come from?
Well, could I just offer something? Because of my conversations, and I don't think that I have any private confidential information, because I needed to know what they needed in order to proceed. And they will proceed if, I mean, and I didn't know the number 65, I had no idea. This will satisfy them because they will get the 25 or 30 from the Hospitality Association, MRDT funding to get to 90. And they will probably have some other businesses, corporations that if the city's gonna, and we need 10 more thousand to get these studies done, they'll find it, but they can't find the 120,000 out of their pocket and continue to just keep knocking on friends' doors. So I think the motion, the way it sits right now, is absolutely optimum. And if they need more money, they can come back in 2019 when the fund is replenished, and then that council can say yes or no. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Show Councillor Hong and Councillor Fuller opposed. The motion carries.
And me?
Oh, and Councillor Armstrong. Sorry. Motion passes.
No, wait till it comes
And there's
to-
no other items on the agenda. Motion to adjourn. Oh, question period. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Hong, second by Councillor Thorpe. Adjourn. Thanks.